Okay, well, there we beginning this beginning this course, this online course on the universal perspective of unfolding of time and global convergent logic. For those who don't know about these, haven't heard about it previously, it's basically the same. It's the same thing, but in two different levels. Yeah. So it's two names: the universal perspective of unfolding of time, global convergent logic. It's two names that talk about two different areas of the same development, of the same body of information. Okay. Actually, there's a third one, but there's another development within this body of information, but I'm not going to get too much into that for today. Yeah. So, well, welcome to all of you guys, people from different points of the world, different nationalities, and well, that's gonna make it very interesting, as it has the intention of being a universal perspective. So it is a logic which is going to try and globe all nationalities, of course, of this globe that we live in, this Earth. And today we're starting with the first module. And the first module, its focus is to look into the basic concepts, basic ideas, the main fundamental references of the structure. Yeah. So it is very much important for the module, because it is going to give the kind of theoretical background of everything that's going to come after. So it's good that all of you guys could make it to this module, mainly because of that reason. Like, everything we're going to be seeing in the next modules kind of emerges and comes out of these kind of basic principles that we're going to be seeing today. Yeah. I know that there's some people that have never heard about this. There's other people that I know, and they have been in a journey. We've been in a journey together, so they are quite familiar with most of the concepts, and they're familiar with the developments of all this. But there are other people that are just probably listening to this for the first time. So of course, for those people that have been following with me, this is like, it's an opportunity of kind of just saying, I forget everything I know, and I'm just going to listen to this with a, an innocent mind, a kind of a curious, innocent mind without any prevision of it, and just kind of, listening to the main concepts. And it's always good to do that, actually, because of course there is going to be something that develops upon this basic structure that will be explained today. Yeah, and it grows upon it. It grows upon it. But it is like these main key principles are something that we always have to do, like a kind of revision, and it's like always go deeper into the basic principles to grow higher. Yeah. So it's, whenever you're growing, you mustn't forget the basis of that building that you're growing. Yeah, because that tends to happen a lot of times in development or in growth. Like, for example, sometimes, physics teachers or scientists, they start growing in complexities and higher levels of coherency. But what happens a lot of the time is that they never review the basis. And it's been proven a lot of times in science that most of the errors of a certain field, that they're not being able to go beyond a certain point, And the people who discover why that is because they see that there's the axiomatic error in the basis. So it's always important to revise the basis to grow. It's like a plant. This is a very good analogy of a plant. You see, if you have the roots of the plant, and if you have a plant in a little pot, okay, the roots can't go very deep, yeah, because the roots are the basis of the plants. It's like the first thing that they have to grow in order to go up, yeah, they have to have roots, yeah. So the first thing that when the seed is activated, the first thing that starts to grow is the roots, the bases, the base structure. Now, the more that the plant has space to grow the roots down, so it can go deeper into the basis, the higher it can grow up. So if you have, let's say, a cactus in a little pot, and it's confined in that pot, the cactus can only grow a certain height. It doesn't matter the quality of the quality of sun, water, compost. It's not going to be able to grow out of a certain limit because the roots can't go deeper. And this is this kind of balance. Like when we are kind of growing into higher levels of reach, of complexity, and of coherency, it's very important that we're also doing it with the roots, because if not, it becomes unstable. It becomes unstable. Yeah. So this is also this opportunity for all of you guys. Yeah. So probably the first thing to start with is that, well, mainly what we are going to be, the question we're going to be asking and what we're going to be looking into is reality, okay? Reality. So a very simple but fundamental question of what is reality, yeah? And we're going to try look at it in a way which has a logical point of view. Yeah, that's why the global convergent logic, it has that logical vision of it, and of trying to look into reality. Of course, we do have the aspects of reality that seems obvious. I'm just going to close the door because there's some noises coming through. By the way, here we are in summer, and it is pretty hot. Yeah. Good. So yeah, pretty hot. I've got my cat that is kind of like that. I think it thinks it's going to lose its soul with the heat. So what is reality? Yeah, what is reality? So let's start that question in a very experiential way. Yeah, okay. Like what do we mean by reality? What is reality? So, well, one of the obvious things, like just seeing what is my experience of reality at this moment, right now, right here. You know, not like philosophical ideas about what reality is. No, what is my direct experience right now of reality? What is it made out of? You know, what is the structure of my experience of reality? Probably one of the first things that you see or you notice is that there is, for like, what is allowing me to have this experience of reality? Well, one of the first things is that there is a concrete body. I'm aware that there is this, you know, body, okay? But when we're saying the experience of reality, yeah, you can't just say that reality is the body and other different types of objects that I see. Kind of like reality is just this material thing going on outside of me, you know. You say this body, this car, this bottle, this computer, yeah. Why can't we just reduce reality to that? Because we have an experience of reality. So the question is, what is that which is having an experience? And also, what is that which is experiencing reality? So this kind of thing that's going on outside here, and the first thing I realize what's going on out here is that, oh, I have a body. Yeah. Because probably the first kind of essential truth that's undeniable for anyone, is that I'm experiencing. Yeah, it's like you can't just, it's just obvious. From there we can go into different perspectives on it, but it's obvious that, well, I exist. Yeah. So when you say I exist, first you know that you exist because there is a body that exists. There's something like material. There's a concrete thing that exists, okay? But then you are saying, I exist. I exist. Okay, so what's this I? Yeah. And what we notice is that the proof of existence in the material sense is kind of out there. It's like in the external. But the experiencer is kind of in here. It's kind of internal. So one of the first things that we kind of see is that reality has this outer world and it has this inner world. This outer world, it kind of has this empirical objective, material aspect. You know, things that I see, things that I hear, things that I touch. Okay, so it's reality has that part, which is, and where is that? The noises come outside, the sound, the images come outside. I touch things that are outside. Okay, so there we have this outer, but then it's I hear, I touch, I see. Where is this I that's experiencing? Well, it's kind of, if we have to put it in any direction, it's kind of inside. And the question would be, can we separate reality from this I? This I, this inner world, we can call it, if you want, consciousness. Consciousness. And can we understand reality only with the material external world, without this inner consciousness? Okay, like it seems that reality is not just this external material thing going on out there. It's also this experience of this consciousness that is aware of all that stuff going on out there. So what we see is something which is concrete, as my body, as this bottle, as the sounds. It's concrete. Yeah, it's materially concrete. But then if we have to look into consciousness, we see that it's not that concrete. It's like the experiencer, the consciousness, where, you know, like it isn't a thing. It isn't like a thing. It isn't an object I can look at. It's like it hasn't got this empirical proof to it. but it has common sense proof that I'm experiencing it. So there we have two sides of reality. One side which is concrete and one side which is abstract. And this is something that is going to appear all the time when we're speaking. That reality is made out of a concrete and an abstract aspect, which is dialoguing together. They're not dissociated. They are both part of the same reality, but definitely have a quality differentiation. And this is where, while I'm explaining this, and hopefully you guys are noticing this in your experience, okay? Like, you can check it that this is happening. That, okay, well, when I say I exist, it's because there's something material called a body, but there's also this consciousness in me, and you can check it. But while I'm explaining, I'm also going to be putting on the board a graph, a design. A graph, a design, which has the intention of allowing your brain to not only hear words that make sense, but to synthesize it into an image. Because the best way that our brain can synthesize information is through images. And images which compact a lot of words. There's the famous saying that an image says more than 1,000 words. Yeah? Well, because an image synthesizes and the brain can capture a whole understanding, which if it has to explain it, maybe it'll take hours, but it can capture it in an image. And that's what we're going to be trying to do after each module. I'm going to provide an image which captures the whole talk of the module. Yeah? And I'll be giving that image to you guys after. I'll be explaining it here, but then I'll be giving it to you guys to have it there. What's the image going to help you do? That all the things that you've been hearing while I'm talking and while we're sharing together, when you see it in the image, immediately it'll come back to you. Yeah? And that's why symbols have been so important for humans. Symbols. Why? Because a symbol synthesizes a lot of information that if we had to talk about it, it'll take us years. Yes, sometimes years, literally years. So this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be providing a map of the explanation. And where is the territory of this map? You are the territory. Your experience of reality is the territory. So this is very important, because what we're going to be sharing here is something that we call a reference system. A reference system, not a belief system. So the universal perspective of the unfolding of time and the global convergent logic, from now I'm going to use I'm just going to say the perspective and the logic, okay, is a reference system, not a belief system. Now, that difference is fundamental, because a belief system gives you a series of set answers for you to apply to your life. Okay? It gives you answers and you apply it. This is not going to do that. This is going to give you perspectives. It's going to give you references. It's going to give you points of view. But your life is the answer. Meaning, like a lot of people say, for example, for example, you know, in the Buddhist kind of philosophy or whatever, there is a vegetarian, I'm kind of making it up, okay, just for you guys to get the idea. There is a, you know, a vegetarian lifestyle, yeah, of not eating animals or whatever. Now, you see, that is a belief system because it's telling you what to eat. It's giving you a set answers. If you want to be whatever, you have to eat this. Now, the answers of, for example, what you have to eat is something that you have to discover in your life, in your experience, with different information. This is not going to tell you what to eat. It's not going to tell you what to do and what to not to do. It's going to tell you from where to see things, and you discover what to do or what not to do. Okay? Of course, from time to time, I could probably share a recommendation, but it's not a like a crystallized answer. Like, if you don't eat this, you're not a good Christian, or you're not a good Buddhist, or you're not a, or whatever it is. Yeah? This is like, no. And we call that seeing that you are the territory and your experience of life is the territory, and this is just a kind of, it's a map which comes from the logic of the universe, from the structure of the universe. We call that self-reference. Self-reference. It means each self has the reference to guide itself through its own journey of life. There is no kind of authority over your journey. The maximum authority is self-referential. Okay? There is an interdependence of relationship that is different to and a certain kind of, you know, external authority. So there is no authority here. Okay, this information has emerged out of a person from Argentina called Alejandra Casal. Okay, and definitely she was the person that had the ability to be able to express something that was coming from the unexpressed areas of reality. But that doesn't turn her into an authority. You see, that is kind of an old paradigm way of seeing it, that there is this authority center, and whatever comes out of that authority center is what has to be done on the peripheral areas. That is not how it works. Okay. Of course, Alejandra's perspective is very valuable, but that never means that it has a higher definition on your decisions. So your decision on what to eat, who to be with, who not to be with, where to live, where not to live, how to treat your children and how to treat your, all those are your territory. Yeah, this has nothing to do with giving answers on that sense. You have to discover it. But this does give a way to finding out where you can reach those answers within and without. Okay? It's going to put the light there. So this is the dark. Better. Good. You'll see me drinking a lot of water. Okay, so this understood. Let's begin with this graph, which I call, which is what is called the stencil. And it's going to be explaining and providing this image at the same time. And this is going to help your brain to be able to capture and synthesize what is being shared, okay? So this point in reality which I call the fundamental proof, yeah, because it's probably the most undisputable truth of your experience of reality is I exist. So this point here is dealing with that, I exist. Okay? And we're looking at it from an individual point of view. And I said, well, there seems to be, when I look into this I exist, this fundamental truth, this undisputable truth, there seems to be this two-phase aspect of this reality. One which is this external material, physical, concrete aspect, but also this kind of not so immaterial, abstract, internal aspect, which let's give them names. Okay, let's give them names. So that external material, concrete aspect, we're going to call it existence. Existence. Manifest, expressed existence. And this kind of internal, witness, this I that is experiencing, we could call that consciousness. Okay. Now, how are we going to symbolize these two aspects? Well, we're going to put one, which represents something physical, a unity, one, because if something the existence has, is that it's made out of individual things. If there's something out there that you can realize is that everything there's this individuality, which is contained within a bigger individuality, but it has that aspect to it, yeah? So, there's one phone. So each reality has this unity in it, this individuality, one. And one also means something that exists, concrete. And then this consciousness, we're going to represent it with a 0. Because 0 is a number which you can't see in the material world. Like, where is there a 0? You know what I mean? But 0 is the fundamental ground from where all numbers emerge from. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that the fundamental structure of reality is the combination between something which is concrete and something which is abstract. And a simple way of seeing this in our direct experience is the concrete is that material, expressed world, and the abstract is this witness, this consciousness. Yeah? Because if you pay attention to that consciousness, that aspect which is aware of what it is listening, it's aware of what it's smelling. So the smell comes from outside, but the smeller is, where is that? Where is that experiencer? Yeah, where is the experiencer? So it's abstract. And this is kind of like, the binary code in computer information. The binary code is the combination between ones and zeros to be able to create anything, to be able to process any type of information. And they only need ones and zeros. Then it depends how they combine together. Well, reality is made out of ones and zeros. Not only the computer things. The computer binary code is just an expression of that intrinsic structure of reality. That intrinsic nature of abstract and concrete. We could also call it visible and invisible. We can also call it female, more abstract, and male, female, more concrete, male, more abstract. Lately, I used to use that terminology. Now I don't use it anymore. Why? Because we confuse male and female with our ideas of what a man or a woman is. Okay? And although there is some correlation, a lot of times it creates more misinterpretation than understanding. So I prefer abstract and concrete, visible and invisible, form and formless. You see, that's a thing of consciousness. What form has it got? You know, like if you look in your experience, the experiencer, what is the form of it? Like, what is it, round? Is it, what color has it got? Okay, we'll be doing an exercise, I'm not sure if in this module or the next module, to have a direct experience for that. You know, the abstract, formless, immaterial nature of the basis of our consciousness. So this is the fundamental point of everything we're going to explain. It is very simple, but from this simple principle, all complexities emerge from it. But this is the main key simple thing. Reality is made out of something abstract, something concrete. We could call it existence and consciousness. That is a way to explain this structure in a direct experience. Yeah. So up to here, so good? So if there's no questions or hands up, I guess I can continue, yeah? Yeah, so now, with this, what I'd like to continue into this explanation is that one thing we realize also is that, okay, there's a world out there, there's a world in here, but something else has to be taken into consideration. It's not only that there's individual things out there, you know, like my computer, another person, a chair, is that those things are changing. Those things are moving. Those things are transforming. Meaning that there's not only space, individual space out there, there's also time. So it seems to be that reality is made out of something external, concrete, something internal, abstract. But it's also made out of something we call space and something we call time, which makes up the basic structure of reality, of external reality. The internal also, we'll get into that. But out there, we see that there is space which gives the object its form, and time, which is what is moving that form. Okay? You see me? Another thing I want to look into is that you see these two principles, this abstract and the concrete. You can never really completely separate them. They are so intertwined, they are so interconnected, there's no way that you can purely separate them. When we are speaking and making the difference, it is just for pedagogical reasons. But anything you separate actually is interrelated. Why is my camera kind of focusing? So what this means is that within the concrete, we can find an abstract, and within the abstract, we can find the concrete, because you can't really separate them entirely. We are making a differentiation because it's good for an explanation and it's good for a mental understanding. So let's see. when I say the external world is made out of concrete things, like my telephone, like etc., etc., it's made out of individual bodies. But at the same time, if you look carefully, that's not all that's true. Because between this telephone, which is an individual body, and me, what do we have? We have space, but space without content. We could call it empty space. Now, empty space is not very concrete, is it? It's like, I can't really grab it, empty space. But empty space is what's allowing this telephone to be here and me to be here. So there's something abstract in the concrete. Do you see what I mean? And there's another fundamental rule or law of reality, that the abstract is what holds and sustains the concrete, never the other way around. The invisible is what sustains, holds the visible, never the other way around. They are interrelated, but there is an order of the relationship. There's an order, meaning, if there's no empty space, abstract, there is no telephone. How could there be a telephone if there's no space, empty space for the telephone to be there? See what I mean? So always, anything that is visible is coming from something that's invisible. That is, it is sustaining it. So although they are interrelated, intertwined, there's an order, there's like a hierarchy in the relationship. Not a hierarchy of domination, not the hierarchy we have in our mind of, you know, the higher is the one that orders, and no, it's an order of relationship. It means that we can have space without the phone, but we couldn't have the phone without the space. Okay? So we can have we can have formless without the form, but we can't have form without the formless. There's an order relationship there. And if we go into consciousness, which is the abstract, what do we find? If we go inside the consciousness, can we find things that are concrete? Yes. We find thoughts, concrete thoughts. I can close my eyes and I can see an image. And that's happening in my inner world, but it's something concrete within my abstract. I can have emotions. Nobody sees them, but it's very concrete within that inner world. And if there's something abstract out there called space, which contains objects, in here it has the same structure. I have what I call consciousness zero, which is empty witness, meaning just like a witness, a consciousness that observes all thoughts, opinions, emotions. But the opinions, emotions, thoughts are objects that appear within its ground inner space. Can you guys follow that? So inside there is something that is a consciousness which is just like empty space, which is sustaining different little forms in my consciousness, little thought patterns, little emotional patterns, little image patterns, little visions. You see? So there is a similar structure out there than in here. They reflect each other, both structures. Okay? In another module, we're going to talk about how they communicate. We're not going to go into that today. How is it that there is this communication from the outer, the inner, from the visible and invisible? I don't want to go too much into that, okay? So, within 1, we have 0, and within 0, we have 1. Within my consciousness, I have little individual entities called thoughts, called emotions. And out there, which is where all the physical material things are there, the individual material things, there's something abstract which contains it. Okay? We call that the unfoldment. Why is it unfolded? It's unfolded because there's something that is individual and separated, but there's something that contains it in a unified field. That's why we have the unfolding word there. Unfolding is something that's a unity unfolds into diversity, but it doesn't lose its character of unity. So let's see that. There are many individual objects in this room, but the space is a unity which is containing all that different expressions. So to summarize, what the unfoldment is together and separated at the same time. It is together and separated at the same time. Like a mamushka, like a matrushka, like the Russian dolls. It's another analogy. It is all together, but at the same time it's separated. Okay? Now that is the space unfoldment. It's the unfoldment of space. But there's also an unfoldment of time. But probably, as you guys know, time and space are, they are together, you see? And if we look at time and space, again we see abstract and concrete. Again we see abstract and concrete. Space is more concrete, a space. Time is more abstract, you see? But time is what's moving, directing space. But then, as Einstein put it, it's a unified reality. It's space-time. You can't really separate them completely. It's not like there's space over here and time over here. So it's space-time. But you see, space-time, again, has that nature of abstract and concrete. Because time, where the hell, physically, where is time? You see, time is this abstract, moving, developing, evolving thing that is giving and making sense out of all the objects, which is relating all the objects together. Okay? So to summarize, what is reality? What is reality? Reality is this simple thing that we are experiencing, and which is made out of an aspect and a concrete aspect. But these are two essential ingredients that are interlinked together. It's like saying, how do you bake a cake, you see? And you tell the people all the ingredients. But to have the cake, you need all those ingredients to come together. And there's a moment that you can't really differentiate where the egg is and where the milk is and where the flour is. It's just that they all together. Okay? In our experience, reality is this external world dialoguing with this internal world. The external world looks more concrete, and the internal world seems more abstract. But within the concrete, there's an abstract, and within the abstract, there's a concrete. So in that external world, we see concrete individual objects, but contained within an empty space. Within the inner consciousness, we see that there are these patterns with like little entities called thoughts, called emotions, called etc., ideas. But then there is this silent, conscious space, witness in the background. So reality is the dialogue between existence and consciousness, consciousness and existence, and which is made out of a space-time structure. Space-time structure. Space gives, and the space gives the individuality of form, but sustained with the formless, empty space. And time is which gives that form a process of growth, a process of unfoldment, also unfolding. So time also unfolds. Okay? Also, there's an unfoldment of time. There's a development. There's a path. There's something that is moving in a sequence. Time. But time is also something internal, because I see that my thought patterns change. My thought patterns, my emotional patterns grow into higher levels of coherency and complexity. And the same thing happens out there. So there's an evolutionary process in reality. Reality has an evolutionary process. So up to here, up to this point, are we all good? Is somebody talking? Oh, it's me, I think. I was talking. Okay, let me see your faces. This is because I'm not really looking at you guys. So up to here, we going good? Thumbs up, or if we're going confused? Excellent. Okay, especially interested with the new people. How are they going? Okay, excellent. Let's continue with this then. Good. Now, let's look at time. And time gives this definite experience of a process. And this process has a structure, has a way of organizing itself. So like if we want to see a seed grow, it has a sequence, a pattern in its growth. It doesn't just start with flowers. See, it doesn't do it that way. It has a sequence. It has a logical construction. It's like mathematics is the same. If we say we see the process of numbers, it has a pattern. It's not like 0, 9,321. No, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what happens? Each number contains the other numbers. So it transcends to a new number, but contains the previous numbers. But all numbers have a structure. What is the structure of all numbers? The numbers that go from 0 to 9. Because any number you want to tell me, no matter how big it is, no matter how small it is going to contain the structure of 0 to 9. Okay? Well, the same thing. So let's continue looking into time. So time is definitely, well, there's something obvious. Let me take away this ones and zeros here. That time has, well, this experience that is going on right now, which we call the present. This experience, okay, right now, the present. But it definitely has this feeling that, well, this experience I have comes from a sequence of events, which we call the past. Yeah? The way that we're going to be seeing the past is not a sequence of events, really, but for now, let's just put it that way, okay? Past, okay. But, so when I see in the present, if I'm aware, I see repeated patterns. Repeated patterns. Like, it's not like time is this crazy thing, always completely new. You know, like if I close my eyes and open, there's completely new patterns all the time. No, there is these repeated patterns. A repeated patterns that gives a conservation in the presence of patterns. Now, could we say that the present is just the consequence of repeated patterns? No, because there's also new patterns appearing. New patterns are appearing all the time. Because if there were no new patterns, we would always be seeing the same thing again and again, and that is not how it is. There's this newness coming in. And where is that newness coming from? It can't come from the past, because the past, the only thing it does is repeat patterns. So it must come from another quality of time, which we call the future. So in the present, we see that there is this repetition of patterns, but at the same time, in the same present, we see that there is this innovation of patterns. So one has this more conservation, and this other one has a more innovation. And you see, we wouldn't be able to make sense of time if we didn't have these two qualities. If everything was just pure innovation, we wouldn't be able to follow it. Can you see that? If everything was just complete, total innovation all the time, we wouldn't be able to establish it was like it's completely new, and there's no way of kind of, you know, following it from a sequence. We would not understand anything. Now, if everything was just conservation of patterns, nothing would be new. It would just be the same thing on and on and on again. But we see that reality isn't that way. Reality is conservation and innovation in the same time, present. And what we call this timeline of reality is its evolutionary process. We call this also the x-axis. The x-axis, like in, you know, mathematical, the x-axis. And now you're going to ask, and the y-axis? What about the y-axis? Okay, well, good question. Because this is where it comes hard sometimes to explain. It is true that there is this level that is always changing, transforming, transcending, including. Basically, the main pattern of time and evolution is transcend and include. The future allows us to transcend to different levels, but the past is what includes that. Transcend and include. And if we see the evolution of matter, everything that has an evolutionary growth process has this mechanism, this transcend and include. But a very simple way of seeing it is the evolution of matter. So we have atoms which transcend into molecules, but molecules include atoms. Okay, so atoms are like conserving the base structure, but the molecules are transcending to an innovative level, a new level. But then the same thing happens from molecules to cells. Cells conserve, molecules conserve and contain or include, what is this? Atoms too, but they transcend it. It brings something new. You see, there's something that the cell has that molecules don't. It gives a newness, it gives an extra value. You know, VAT, what is it called? Is that here it's IVA, valor agregado. I'm not sure what's it in English. I'll look at, because it's actually, life brings VAT all the time. Extra value, additional value. That's what evolution is. It's all that which happened and something new. But there's a trap in time which we'll look into now. The trap is using the past to create the new. That is not a new creation at all. That's a trap, okay, in time. It's like it seems new, but it's not new. Because you're using the past, really. Okay, so you're refining the conservation. But I don't want to go too. So the x-axis is the axis of value added, okay? So evolution works with that, okay? Value added. And that's what a growth of your own life should be. It should be value added, added value. You know, that should be an adult, should be. But, well, it doesn't always work that way. So there's meaning, what I'm saying there is that there's dysfunctions in the growth process. There's functions and there's dysfunctions. Dysfunctions is not something bad. That's another way that we're going to be looking at things. That what we call the error is actually the possibility of learning. Okay, but we'll look into that probably in another module. It's not this module. I want to look at the main structure. So the x-axis is this process in time, okay? This process in time. Normally the way that we see time, is that past is what sustains the present and it projects itself into the future. Okay? And that is actually an aspect in time. That is true. The thing is, that's not the only dynamic in time. That is one dynamic in time, which is, for example, if I'm going to program something, I program it based on my experience of the past, meaning like normally if I do a web conference, at least people tend to have some problems with the audio, so I project myself into the past and I say, okay, so we have to meet a half an hour before. Okay, that is the dynamic of projection. And there's nothing wrong with projection. The problem is when we only living in projection. And that's where you cancel a different dynamic in time. Which is that dynamic in time? Is that when the future comes to your present and redefines the way that you see the past. So one thing is projection, which is good for projects. Okay, it's good for projects. But another thing is the inverse, which is innovation. You see, projection is not innovation. It's different dynamics, and we need both. But innovation is completely different. It's actually the future comes to you and redefines your way of seeing the past. Different dynamics, and they both have to be together to create this beautiful 8. This beautiful 8 like this. This beautiful infinity of evolution. But we need projection and we need innovation. Okay? Innovation is different because innovation is a new idea, let's look at it as ideas, comes to me, this idea is not found in the past. I cannot find it in the past. That future comes to me and it renovates my way of seeing the past. Okay, and this is happening all the time, but what occurs is that we do not know and we do not think that the same way that the past is in dialogue with my present, okay, that is obvious to everyone. The past is in dialogue with my present is obvious to everyone. Like, I can speak Spanish because I lived in Spain, okay? So the past creates it creates an imprint in the present. The past is communicating with the present. And from that, I project myself into the future. But what we don't tend to know is that there's the other way around conversation occurring too, which is that the future is in communication with my present. And when I mean the future, I mean something that you have no idea from the past. And this is also very essential in time, to have the capacity of this other dialogue with time. Let me drink a bit. And let me give you an analogy to explain this. This is where we have the past is in dialogue with the present, and we could call that instinct, which is this movement of conservation, okay? But then the future is having this dialogue with the present, which is what we call intuition. And that is not so much about conservation, it's about innovation. People who have, because there's people that are more connected with the future and others more with the past. Natural. Nothing wrong with any of them. The thing is that when it becomes unbalanced. Well, people like what they call, what do they call these people? Pioneers. You know, the pioneer kind of guy, people, those people that are like receiving new ideas that nobody thought about. Okay, what are they connected into? Their intuition. They are connected into that dialogue from the future to the present. That's why they're able to capture ideas that nobody thought about. These completely new ideas. Then there's other people that they more tend to be in the conservation aspect. So they more about the conservation of their present. Yeah. And the good thing is, naturally, we're going to have a tendency to one or the other, okay? But even though you have a more pioneer direction or a more conservation direction, you have to have the other side to it. Because if not, you get like the pioneers also, when they disconnect with the other side, they begin to dissociate them. Like a lot of the times that happens to inventors. They are so much capturing the future kind of thing that they dissociated with where they are in the present. That's why they can't really communicate with, nobody understands them, because they haven't got the other reference point to situate their idea. It's like, okay, this new idea in this time that I'm living can be communicated this way. Okay, so it's important to have these come together. Again, we tend to have a higher orientation on one than the other. If I have to say which one tends to be a bit more, or is more important to be dominant, yeah, I would say it's this future to the past, yeah, because something is always moving to grow. But if we are growing faster than we can conserve ourselves, this is the analogy. we are growing so big up, you know, like the plant is growing so big up, but the roots aren't kind of consolidated. What happens? It gets unbalanced, and it can happen that it gets so unstable that with just a little wind or whatever, it breaks. So there has to be this kind of balance between both. Okay? Good. Those are the dynamics of time. We call that the raw movement. Yeah, it's another way of seeing x-axis. It's the raw. The raw. Raw is a word in Greek which means unfoldment. The raw. But now we have to go into another area of reality. You see, reality has this component which is moving in time, transforming and changing, the space-time transformation. But it also has an aspect which we call the 0 point or the zero axis, which has a timeless nature. A timeless nature. So time is sustained by something which is timeless. And this timeless, meaning without time, is going to be represented with this y-axis here. Y-axis or 0 point. So remember we said that we always have the two sides. We have this concrete and abstract. Well, time also has a concrete, like visible change, but then there's also the timeless. Okay? So, for example, a way of seeing it. I could say that everything, all the objects I see in the room are subject to time. This bottle in 10 years is going to be different, going to be degraded, maybe it's going to be most certainly recycled, hopefully not thrown into the ocean. The computer I'm using, everything is going to change, to transform, to grow, to follow the sequence of evolution. But the empty space between all the things, we can't really say that that is in a process of time. You see? So it is like timeless, because I can't really say that it's changing or it's evolving or it's just being. It's not becoming, it's just being. So that is also these two natures of reality, becoming and being, just being, okay? And there is something in our experience that is not becoming, it is just is, it's just being, it's just being. In the consciousness level of our experience, we could say it's that empty space kind of consciousness, that witness, that has no opinions, has no judgments, it has no philosophy of life, it just is what it is. It's that 0 point in my conscious observer, in my consciousness. Yeah. So we have, let's take the inner world, okay? Because that's where, because you can say X, Y. What about the Z axis? Well, the Z axis, you can't really see it, but from this point we have, the Z is 3 dimension, which gives depth, okay? So it would be that which is coming out the outer world, and that which is going in, the inner. Okay? So in the consciousness level, we see that we have these objects of my consciousness. The objects of my consciousness are, like I said before, the thought patterns, the ideas, the opinions, the conceptions, all that, the feelings, the emotions, etc. And these are evolving. My thought patterns are becoming or they evolve. They have higher degrees of complexity and of coherency. Higher possibilities probably would be the correct word. Yeah? So it's the child thought plus added value. Yeah? But behind all that, there is something in my consciousness that is not in that sequence of transformation, which is just that beingness in me, that observer, we could call it, that is just, would you say that the z-axis is consciousness? No, the z-axis is out and in. So consciousness is the in of the z-axis. Existence is the out of the of reality. Okay, so you see there's an 8 here. Well, now I'm not. Probably the guys that know this are following me. There's also an 8 here. Yeah. Well, there's also an 8 here. There's also an 8 doing this from out to in. Why? Because the outer and the inner are having a conversation. Existence, consciousness, are having a feedback. This is something that we haven't looked too much into, which is the z-axis. Yeah? So we have this evolutionary pattern, we have this beingness or permanent pattern, and then we have outer inner. And we have the evolutionary and the permanent within and without. Within and without. That's why in this point, everything is concentrated in this point here. All the axes are there. That's where they all meet. In this simple, I exist. That's why the present, the whole thing that the present is so important, everything is in the present. Well, this is the way, this is a logical way of seeing that. Everything is occurring in the present of each individual person. Okay. So, what the movement that occurs, okay, with the x-axis is like evolutionary movement, evolution. In the y-axis, the movement is more like, I find it hard, it's more a being movement, a being. And I would say that especially for us individual creatures in plane 1, I'll get into the planes now, it is also a kind of waking up pattern or dynamic. Because you see, who we truly are is what we always are. Meaning that who we truly are in essence can't be found in time. We can't find it in time. In time, we can evolve the expression of who we are. Okay? See, there's a big difference. But to recognize who we are, we have to find it in the timeless. The recognition, the conscious recognition of who we are is not found in time. So sometimes I say the two most important purposes in the human journey. I believe in the human journey, but I think it's in the journey of consciousness in itself, is to evolve and to wake up at the same time. To wake up in the sense that remember who you are, which is this timeless being. But at the same time, it's becoming more and more of the expression and time of that. So that's where we have this process in X and a kind of process in Y. And the Z for me is the communication of the outer and the inner of that process of evolving and waking up. Okay, so what time is it? So we've been more or less about an hour and a half. Anybody got any questions with this? Because if not, we can have a little break. Just a little, chill out for about 10, 15 minutes and come back with the second part of the module. I wanted to explain you guys something before. No, I'll explain it after. Will you explain the Z-axis another time? Okay. X-axis, X is the axis of evolution, process of time. The Y-axis is the axis of being, okay? 0 points. The Z-axis is that things begin to have an outer expression and an inner expression. You see, you can't find that in X or Y because the permanent Y-axis and the evolutionary is both out there and in here. You see? So both of them are happening in the X-axis. You can't really see it because it's something in this point is coming out, the existence, the external world. Can you see that? And something is going in also in that direction. That's why we have an experience of something that's out there and something that's in here. Because there's this Z-axis, this feedback between the outer and the inner. But X and Y is found in both. You see, there's something permanent out there, which is empty space, is permanent, and the present moment. And there's something changing, evolving out there also. And the same happens within. Something permanent, this space, 0 point consciousness, this silent witness, if you want, or this beingness. And then there's what I call the state of consciousness, which is an inner X-axis, but it has to do with the inner consciousness, not out there. So things are evolving out there, like materially, but things are evolving in here, in my consciousness, and they're evolving together. Is it a bit more clear, the Z-axis? Or so? I can't see you guys. Yes, okay. Okay, there's something I wanted to explain. I wanted to give an example. Many of you guys have heard me about how, it's a way to understand that the future is in dialogue with the present and redefining the past. Okay? Actually, the future is giving direction to the past. The past is giving it land. The future is giving it direction. So we'll go with that when we come back, and then we're going to see the planes. The planes of this, we've seen the axis. Now we're going to see the planes, which are the dimensions of these axes. Okay? So speak to you guys in, let's say 10 minutes. Let's put it 10 minutes, okay? In 10 minutes, we'll be back. I'm actually going to record this for the people that, for the people, what I'm thinking of doing is creating a WhatsApp group only for the course. I have a WhatsApp group for English and all that, but I want one also only for the course, where we can have just a place for sharing or a place for questions, or whatever. Yeah. Yes, I'm recording. Yeah, I'm recording. Thanks for reminding. So if you guys are interested in being in that group, if you could send me or a WhatsApp. Well, I think most of you guys, I have your contact, but the people who I don't, which I guess you know who they are, if you could send me it, and I'll create the group. Also, tell me if you don't want to be in the group, because it could be, you know, like people just don't want to have so many groups. So also tell me that to not include you in the group in that case, okay? And that'll be a good way of, you know, because from one module to another, it's a month. So to have those little spaces of connecting, it could be good. Not only me with you guys, but also between you guys, yeah? Which I think will be helpful. Like Jeff just shared like an image of how it would be with the Z-axis, so those type of things I think are very, it will be very useful for that. Yeah? And also the idea of some of you guys meeting together, I think that's also good, because maybe when we finish here and you want to go out or you want to meet, and you can continue kind of talking between each other, maybe even meeting in another day where we don't have the module. So it's I think it's a good possibility, a good experience, all that, yeah. And by the way, if Sebastian Llanos is going to England, which I heard he is, I recommend going to his TUMI workshop. He does speak in Spanish, but really, really good. He explains that aspect very, very good. Okay, let's continue with this. So, before I continue into the dimensions or the planes of reality, okay, I just wanted to give a little example on this thing of, like, a little analogy of how the future is the one that's moving the past. Like, it's the one that is moving the past and the present. And the analogy would be, because we've probably heard that time is simultaneous, like present, past, and future are occurring simultaneously at the same time, yeah? But it's that it's unfolded, but it's kind of always having this dialogue with each other. And a simple, because it sounds like this kind of crazy thing going on, and I think it's more normal than we think. Probably have to get used to the idea. But a simple analogy, and it's just an analogy to help the mind kind of understand it, is that because normally what we think is that how can the future talk to the present if it hasn't happened? It doesn't exist. See, the past, I understand, it already exists, and that's why I still have it. But the future, why is it, you know, like, how could it be? Well, let's take the example of a seed and a plant that is growing, okay? Well, the first thing, the seed is kind of like, we could say, it's a way of saying that it's this timeless, you know, because in the seed, you have all the information. In the seed, you have compacted in time zero, present, past, and future. Yeah, because you have in the seed the maximum future, which of a plant, let's say it's an apple tree, the maximum future of an apple tree is its maximum purpose. We also say that future is what provides purpose. The past is what provides existence, conservation of existence, innovation of purpose. So the purpose, we could say, of a seed, of an apple tree seed, in it is the fruit, the apple, the fruit. But it contains the roots, it contains everything, but instantaneously, like non-linearly, it contains it all there. So when it begins to activate the seed, it begins a process of time, of development. And it starts with the roots, and It continues kind of moving. Now, you see, although the fruit, just imagine that the seed is already, the tree is already grown up to the point of having roots and a bark, okay? So it has roots and a bark. Although the apple, because the apple is the fruit, the apple fruit, is the purpose of the tree, even though it does not exist yet, that apple is what is telling the tree what to do. You see, that apple, because the tree has a direction. The tree has the direction of creating fruit. And although at the moment of development, as I said before, it only has roots and a bark, and there's no fruit, the fruit doesn't exist, the fruit is telling from the future what the next step of development of the tree is. And let's say the next step is to have branches, because without branches there's no fruit. So, and it's redefining the past. You see that? So, it's just a way of seeing that the future is telling, you know, that fruit, that future of us as humans and of the earth, that, like, we could say, you know, like that end completeness in its evolution, okay, is what's moving each point in the present, redefining the past. Can you see that? So, like, it's not like the tree is this blind growth. It's like, let's see what happens, and it's like blindly growing. No, the fruit already knows where the tree's going in its growth process, and it's telling the past is telling where the present is, and the future is telling where it's going. So what does the past give us? It tells us where we are. It gives us the position. I say the past gives us the position, but the future gives us the direction. Okay, so, and we have this combination, and the direction, we can't look at it from that which is informing us the position. So we can't find the direction in the past. You can't find the direction. The past gives you position, which is important. I have to know where I am. The past is telling me I'm a human being called David on planet Earth. Okay, so it gives me a position. But that past doesn't give me the next step. It doesn't give me the direction. The direction comes from something that doesn't exist yet. The fruit doesn't exist yet. So if the tree is trying to look for its next step in its past, it's not going to see it. It's just going to repeat its past. Is this example good enough to understand this other direction of time, this direction of innovation, where the future is what is communicating with the present and redefining the past? I can't see you guys, but I imagine if there's no writing, I imagine that is a yes. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so that now it's not that simple. It's more complex. It is not exactly like that analogy, but the analogy gives a good way of understanding. But since the apple is sort of, you see, that is the thing. That is the limitation of the analogy. You see, the thing is that the future has direction, but it's not predetermined, because there is this aspect of uncertainty. It is true that there are certain directions that are not possible to go. But it's like this Netflix movie that came out the other day where it had many endings kind of thing. Yeah? But definitely there is this future talking with the present. Depending on what the action occurs in the present, it recalculates the information that the future gives to the present and redefines the past. So time is not, I don't see time as the, you see, it's a paradox. Time is determined, but at the same time it's flexible. It's like a flexible determination. Like, it is definite that there are certain directions that planet Earth is not going to take. It's like, it's not going to become Mars, okay? So that is out of its possibilities. But in its own possibilities, it has this fluidity. It's not so, yeah, it's like a GPS recalculating. Yeah. So, so I don't see it determined. I wouldn't see it that way. You see, the example of the analogy is determined. And that's where the analogy fails. That's the thing of analogy. It's good up to a certain point, but after a certain point, it's not that good, because in a seed, it's kind of determined there's going to be that. I don't think time is that way. It has a level of uncertainty. Makes the game interesting. Okay, and the connection. Well, okay. Now let's go. I think the next step would be to see the planes, okay? The planes that make up this reality in plane, I've already put it plane 1. Plane 1 is where all the planes come together in an expressed manifestation. We call it the concrete plane, where it's all kind of manifested, okay? But there are levels that made that manifestation possible. And those levels are parts of that reality. It's like Russian dolls again. Yeah? It's different levels in the same manifestation. So now let's look into these levels. These planes, these dimensions. Yeah? Well, 1, as I said, we could also call it is the plane of reality. And reality is made out of individualities, out of different ones. You know, David is 1, Susan is 1, yeah? But it's sustained by a 0, which is connecting all those ones together. Yeah? Now, here we have to differentiate 3 planes, which are very crucial, like connector planes, which are y-axis, yeah, which is 1, 4, and 7. 1, 4, and 7. Now, this is kind of like the Holy Trinity, we could say, you know, like they all occurring at the same time kind of thing. But the intention is to explain these things that I believe are truths, but they were explained in the language of the time, meaning mainly it was more kind of like a mythological explanation. This has the intention of giving logical explanations. Yeah, that's why it's called global convergent logic, like a logical explanation. So the Holy Trinity in each thing is that each thing has a body, physical body, a physical vehicle, okay? Inside that physical vehicle, it has something which so plane 1 is, each plane, okay, so this is important to say. Each plane, I'm going to give it a name, but understand that that plane can't be reduced to that name. Like, I'm giving it a name to make it understandable, but that plane is more than just that name. It has other levels to it. But to keep it in a communication where we can all understand each other, so plane 1, we could call it reality. We could call it also the physical body, the vehicle, the manifested dimension. Okay, so there's different ways of seeing that same plane. So, but what I advise you is not to reduce the plane to one name, but the other way around. The plane must, the number must contain many words, not the other way around. Not saying that this word defines the plane. No, no, no. This plane includes that name. Okay, is that understood? So, one, we could call it many things. For the purpose of our own individual experience, I'm going to call it the physical body, okay, or the physical plane. Let's call it the body. But understand that what is reality is the manifestation of many bodies with this consciousness inside it. Okay. Plane 4 is the design or the identity of that body, of that reality. So, let's see how we can explain this. I am, this physical manifestation is one, David, individual body, David, within in relation with other individual bodies in this whole reality, the whole reality of individual things talking with each other, okay? Individual bodies linking with each other. Now, each of those aspects of reality is going to have a design. A design is that which designs it, is that which defines it. That's why it's an identity. So, for example, I have the design of the house, and then I have the house. You see that they are two different levels? One is the manifested house, and one is the design of the house. Can you see that, guys? And the design determines its identity. So if the design has 4 rooms, when I make the house, it has 4 rooms. It's going to give it an identity. So David has a design. It has a design in his personality. I belong to a species which has a design, a different design. So the human design is different to the tree design. Okay, so there is this level of design which gives us an identity from where it's like, from where this comes into manifestation, the design. Yeah, so each thing that is different has a different design. Yeah. Now, the design or the identity is what allows us to differentiate things. But then there's another plane, plane 7, which we could call, it has many words, okay? But one way of saying it, you can say it in many ways. But I'm just going to rub this because it's getting in the way. With 7, we could say it's source, it's origin. What this also is trying to say is that it is that which contains all the different designs which become or are manifested into different expressions. Now, 7 is the common denominator between the differences. So we have the monkey design, the human design, the tree design, the table design, the house design, blah, blah, all these designs that are making things different, but they all come from the same source. They all essentially are the same being expressed in different ways. So it's the common denominator of the difference. So in David, I have the body, the individual, the manifested me, Then the manifested I, the individual. Then I have the design of David, which is the programming of David that makes me have a certain personality. There's many levels of design, okay? There's many levels. And I have a race design, I have a personality design, okay? And there's other levels that we don't even kind of like, they're not known to us, which I call more the negative side, yeah? It's not only DNA kind of design thing. It has other levels to it, but DNA would be a way of seeing it, yeah? So it has this design of, but within David, the individual David is connected to the indivisible source. And the direct way of experiencing this is just that being, that waking up to the being, to the essential being. We could also call it the essence, 7. Would the negative side be the abstract? Yes, we could put it that way, yeah. It's another way of saying it, yeah. You see, those are more, it's getting into finer detail there, yeah, because there's negative that is actually in the concrete, but it has the same logic to it. Like the negative is more the abstract. It's more the thing that, it's more the intangible. But the intangible is what's creating the tangible, yeah? So we could say that for now. The negative side is the more abstract, okay? And the positive is more concrete. But what I want you guys to recognize is that these 3 players, which are part of which are connected in the same reality, they're not dissociated. And this is very important for our brain to capture this, because what we normally have in our cognition is that the source is somewhere separated from the individual creation. Like the whole idea that source is somewhere out there, you know, looking from outside. And no. Think of them like different Russian dolls, parts of the whole Russian doll, okay? And the big Russian doll is one. It's the more obvious. It's the more, you know, concrete, that big one. But if we look inside the big one, we get into smaller ones, more intangible, more invisible. And then we reach to a doll, which is the last doll, and the difference between that doll and the rest is that it can't be divided. It's indivisible. Okay, well, that's the same thing of our origin, and this is like a words that come together in a very curious way, which is 1 expresses individual, 7 represents indivisible. Now, when the individual, and look where it has the direct communication with 7. Where does it have the direct communication with 7? Where in the timeless. You can reconnect consciously to that indivisible source through the timeless. You see, in time, you're not going to get it. It's in the timeless. Okay? So when the individual looks in itself, in its division, because individual, it's in the division. So the individual is divided, division, in the division. But in also means without. So you see, there's these words that come together in a beautiful way, which is when the individual looks inside in its division, and it looks in, what it finds is the indivisible, meaning no division. So that which is looking through your eyes and my eyes, that background consciousness, that timeless being and the background is the same. It's the same consciousness. Be it Jeff, be it Bert, be it Susan, be it me, be it the monkey, be it the table, it's the same source. It's the same essential being. But looking through different designs, which ends up being experiencing itself through different vehicles. Okay? And we can connect with these three layers within ourselves. Yeah? So the Holy Trinity. And they all occurring at the same time. See? How could it be? Jesus, you know, the whole Trinity problem thing, you know, like, how could it be the Son of God and all that at the same time? But again, I wouldn't, okay, it has that perfume of that truth, but I wouldn't look into there anymore. Why? Because it has a lot of preconceived ideas that we have related to that. So, okay, yes, it is there, that perfume of truth is in it, but let's see it today. Completely new eyes. Let's see it today. Not how the Buddhists saw it, not how the Christians saw it, not how the Indians saw it, not how the whoever saw it. Let's see it in a new way, which is updated to our current time. There we are innovating and redefining the past. We're not using the past to construct the same thing again. Yeah. Okay. So, source origin, another word we can call, another way to say the 7 is, it is a nothing or a no thing. It's a nothing, it's a no thing. And then it has this paradox, because if it's indivisible, it means it has no opposites. So any definition of it, which has an opposite, is incorrect. So if we say it's nothing, at the same time we have to say it's everything. You see, it is the unification of the paradox. It's the unification of the opposites. And it creates a paradox to what our duality brain is used to. It's like, how could it be, you know, like everything and nothing at the same time? And well, it is. It just has no division, so it can't be one-sided. Yeah. Good. Are we good up to here? Can we kind of see these three levels? I'm going to try to keep it the simple as possible, the text. And I'm going to be designing this in one image. I'm going to try to keep each module in one image. Yeah, like not to give you guys too much stuff that you don't end up seeing it. Just one image which kind of captures the whole explanation. So now, from 4 to 1, this area here has a nature to it. And as you can see, no, I'm not going to say this because it's not going to be good for now. So this 4 to 1 and 7 to 4, these are like two areas. You see this area here and this area here, and these are going to divide two different areas of reality, of our experience of reality. From 4 to 1, it's what we call the personal planes. The personal. But 4 to 7 is impersonal. And the impersonal is what is configuring each personal consciousness. So what do we have? And 4, the identity or the design is like this kind of bridge point between the personal and the impersonal. like a bridge point. Now, let's see, because now we have here, what do we have here? We have 2 and we have 3. That 3 was a bit crooked. And always remember the following. Don't reduce the plane to a word. Make the plane include that word in other words. That's very important because each of these planes are like the structure of everything we have, of the whole reality. And so each plane includes many kind of things that we know. So let's go with plane 2. Plane 2 is what we could call, plane 1 is manifestation, what we could call the material kind of, where it all is manifested, okay? 2 is more the kind of energy and movement that ends up being manifested into that particular thing. Okay, so we could call it the plane of energy and movement. We could call it the plane of okay, now this is what is interesting. Remember that all these planes are expressed within and without, meaning one within is the state of consciousness I have within, but one outside is individual bodies. 2 within, in the states of consciousness, is what we call emotions, feelings, chemistry and movement. That's the energy and movement. It has that more energetic, moving circuit thing, okay? More like a transportation of energy. That's why it's a circuit. It has a transportation of energy. So it's more an energetic kind of plane. Okay, 1 is more a matter kind of plane, you know, like material, if you want, or manifested. Now, 3 is different to 2, but it's connected to 2. The same way that energy and matter, we could say, or circuits and the manifestation are connected. Now, 3 has more to do, not so much with energy, it has more to do with information. So, inside, we could call that perception. Perception, mind, visualization, understanding. So there's this other level that is not just feeling, it's not just sensing, it's not just moving, it is understanding, it is capturing ideas, capturing, okay, that is more plane 3. So plane 2, I'm going to define it more in the experiential inner side, okay, which is emotions. Like what we call emotions inside, outside we call it energy and movement. Because what is emotion? It's a chemistry moving through our body. That's an emotion. So it is the energy and movement. Yeah? But inside we call it, it's my emotions. 3, inside we call it mind. Perception, neurological perception, but outside we call it information. Like information is what's like, energy is not just moving in crazy, senseless directions. It's moving in a pattern, meaning it's moving in a kind of, there's an information that is moving that energy. Okay? Now, so we have identity. Let's look at this within. Let's take the design of the human race. The design of the human race gives it an identity. An identity is what makes me define the difference between this and that. So the human is not a monkey. Okay, so it makes it different. See? Differentiation. Now, depending on the design, depending on the identity, is how plane 3 is going to work. So the neurological perception, the management of information in a human design is different than in a tree design or a monkey design. It's different. It's not better or worse, it's different. And the way that energy is going to move, because energy moves because of an information, and the way that that mind is going to move chemistry is different depending on the identity or the design. So the way that that's going to express in a body, the way that it's going to express in the manifestation is going to be different. And the more complex the design is, the more complex the mental plane is going to be, the more complex the emotional plane is going to be, and the more complex the body is going to be. Complex just means more complexity. So if we look at the design of a fish, it has a more simple design. It means it has a more simple neurological perception, a more simple circuitry of chemistry, and it has a more simple body. To analyze it, it's just more simple. So the design defines the expression in the plane, in plane 1, in the manifested plane. Okay? But now this is something I wanted for you guys to see, that we are connected with the past and the future in one plane or in all the planes. That's why when an intuition comes, an intuition will come through our design. So animals, of course, have intuition, have anticipation, are connected to the future. But the way that the future is going to talk through their design is different than ours. Like we as humans maybe could have mental perceptions, like graphics. For example, Tesla or Einstein, when they captured like a new way of understanding, let's take Einstein, the new way of understanding time, like time is relative, he captured it in a kind of mental construction with complexity, like with a graph and with, you know. But did he only capture it in his mind? No, he also captured it in his emotional plane and in his body. See, so the future is talking through all of them. And the past also. So when you remember a past, you're not just remembering it here, you're feeling it here, and your body is responding to that memory. So if in your design, and the design, your identity is not only connected with the past. So your design is also that which hasn't been built yet. And this is a confusion. People think that that design, who their identity is that which comes from the past. No, no, no. It's not only that which comes from the past. It's also that design that you don't know yet. So there's a human design that is in the future. We have no idea what it is. It is not just, the human design is not just what we know of the human. That is this part of the design. But there's another area of the design, this future. Okay? So we could also call these personal or more like concrete planes also. They're more the concrete planes. And the impersonal are going to be more the abstract planes, okay? You see, the body is very concrete, but energy and movement is a bit more abstract, isn't it? But information is even more abstract than energy and movement. Energy movement, I can calculate it with certain sensors in certain ways. But information is very hard to kind of, you know, and the design of that is directing that information is even more abstract. Okay, so there's a pattern of whenever we're getting closer to 7, it has higher levels of abstraction. Okay, abstract, concrete. But then in time we have past is more concrete, future is more abstract. In the z-axis, the outer is more concrete, the inner is more abstract, meaning that everything has an abstract and a concrete. And remember, within the abstract is the concrete, and within the concrete is an abstract. So as you can see, it's a non-dual logic. It's dual and non-dual at the same time. So it allows the differentiation, but also the relationship of unity between them. Good. So up to there, are we good? So in the personal, when I say I had an experience personally, and I'm going to say, tell me your experience. You're going to tell me. You're going to tell me how your body was there, how you felt, what you were thinking, and all that you're going to explain to me is according to your design. If you had a different design and a different identity, you would probably express it in a different way. Like a dog, like a cat. Like, for example, I had to leave for 2 days, so the cat was alone for 2 days. When I come to the house, what does the cat do? It kind of, in its own way, in its own design, it's telling me, hey man, where the hell have you been? You know, I've been waiting for you here. I've been missing you. Like, okay, you've left me food and water, excellent, but where have you been? Okay, of course, I can't say it in that way. My cat is just meowing at me. Yeah, well, mine just looks at me and meows. Meow, meow, meow. It doesn't stop. Meow, meow, meow. I was even thinking, man, it's not going to shut up for when I begin the conference. But you see, it's the cat's way of communicating its personal experience. But it's going to communicate its personal experience according to its design. Okay? So it's not going to give you an elaborate, articulate reasoning of why it missed you. It's just going to go meow. Okay? Well, so each of us has a different design and a different way of perceiving reality, a different way of sensing reality or feeling reality, and a different body. That's why we all have different body expressions. There's not a single body in the whole species that is the same. Not a single body. You know, they can look alike, not even identical twins have the same body. Okay? Because there's all differences. Good. Up to here, so good, so far? See, and these are the main structures that I'll be using in all the coming modules. Yeah? The plane, the axis, okay? And how they communicate with each other. So we're going to be beginning to use this language where we're going to be using like plane 1 and 2, the x-axis, the y-axis, now the z-axis, etc. Okay, let's continue up the. Now we're going into impersonal territory, meaning we're going into non-division. Okay, all these up here are planes, but planes that belong to a non-division. Okay. Now, the first one we have is plane 5. One way that we can, a way of describing this plane, we could call it the big mind. Okay. So 3 would be like the small mind. Okay, it's my personal mind. This we could call it the impersonal mind, the impersonal brain, or brainless mind, because it has no brain, you see? So, there's many ways of describing it. It's like that kind of untangible, invisible intelligence which is behind the configuration of each identity, Yeah. So there's something of the identity of David that is that which creates the identity of David is not the identity of David. It is an impersonal intelligence. It's the same intelligence that is configuring the identity of the monkey, of the trees. It is that global, universal intelligence. Okay? And the difference between this kind of intelligence and 3 is that it is non-linear. Our mind mainly is linear. It sequences things. So it goes like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it goes non-linear. 3 goes linear. 5 is non-linear, meaning that it has a very circular way of, it's a different, it also is called the plane of logic, because it's the logic that configures the identity. So you see, the person who makes the design of the house is not the design of the house. He's the architecture, we could say it in a way. 5 is the impersonal architecture, creating the designs. So it's not a design. That's what's very important. 5 is not a design, meaning it's not an identity, meaning it's not an entity. 5 is not an entity. So one thing is to have abstract identities like angels or masters and all that, but they are identities. It's not 5. 5 is not an entity, it's not an identity, it's not a design. It means it's not a thing, but it is connected to all things. It's kind of like the ocean with the land, like all the land is touched by the ocean. It's that way of seeing it, but like it's very hard to see where it begins and where it ends. Okay, so when we are connected to this intelligence, but not through another identity, like this channeling thing, which, what I'm saying, I have nothing, well, I think in a self-referential experience, we don't need to channel another identity, okay? We just have to channel the impersonal consciousness through my personal consciousness. Why do I have to go through some guy? Why do I have to go through some other entity? Why don't I just connect with the global brain? Why do I have to connect with another entity? So this is important because people confuse 5 with an entity. If there's a logic to one universe and a different logic to a different universe, isn't that a division by definition? Okay, now this is where yes, but at the same time, no. Like, because to explain what the people in New York are asking there, that is a level of complexity, is that there is a logic which is not, it's like the logic of logics, and then there's different logics. Why? Because there's different potentials, and each potential has a logic. It's a difference, but it hasn't got an entity, hasn't got an identity. Oh, okay, so it's a bit confusing. It is a global Look, the Earth. Let's take the Earth as a global intelligence, okay? And it's a global intelligence that is moving all the identities or entities in that Earth, okay? So it's that common logic to each of those different things on the Earth. So the same Earth is moving.
Yeah, David, I think it's more of the non-division, because I see inherently a division. I could see the division being fewer in number than, say, a division on 4. but it's still a division, or maybe it's a bridge from between division and non-division.
Look, it's hard. I understand what you're saying. Probably it has. Look, it has a certain division.
Okay.
But it hasn't got an entity. It hasn't got an entity. It's not a thing.
Okay.
5 is never a thing. Right. But it has got. Let's take this example. You see the logic of the logic of the apple tree. It's in each seed, isn't it? It's like that logic of the apple tree is in each seed. You see?
Yes.
And it's different, and that logic is different to orange tree. Now that logic can't be reduced to the seed. It is connected, so it's impersonal. It's not like belonging to one seed. It is impersonal, but it's connected to all those designs.
But isn't there a division between the apple and the orange?
Yes.
And the logic of the apple and the orange.
Okay, so this is the thing. There is a division, but what is sustaining that division? It's Earth, isn't it?
Okay.
Earth is a logic that is containing the different logics.
Yes.
You see that? So if there's no Earth, there's no apple tree logic, and there's no orange tree logic. You see?
Yeah, I guess it's really the division that I'm getting hung up on. Is that still, even if there's an Earth, there's a logic on the Earth, which is different than the logic on Mars.
Yes, but it is belonging to the same logic of the solar system.
But that's, I don't want to harp on it, but
the unfoldment is everything is separated and together at the same time. And 5 is the intelligence of both things. It has the capacity to have impersonal, but it also has the capacity to differentiate the logics of each design. Probably the best way, you know what you're seeing there, Jeff? You're not seeing 5, you're seeing 54 there. You're 54? Not seeing 5 and you're seeing 54. Because what you're seeing is the logic of each identity. So this is where we have to see it.
I guess what I'm saying is that if it's but logic in and of itself, like all logic, is that what you're saying is 5 then?
It's a word that we can use to reference this plane. Why? Because there is a logic and intelligence from where we configure each identity. So this impersonal brain has this impersonal intelligence has a logic. It's not senseless. It has a logic to it.
Yeah, it's that non-division that I'm getting caught up on. But we could, not to hold things up, we could pick that up another time.
Okay. Because then another interesting thing is to see that I'm explaining the building blocks here, like the difference between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But then when we kind of get into it, we have to see that there's levels of complexity that I can't just say 5 to explain it. I have to say 54. You see? But to understand the number 54, we have to understand 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we have to see that they are different levels of the same mathematics. So that's probably what Jeff is tapping into is 54, which is the impersonal logic, which is configuring the differentiation of each identity. So it's impersonal, but it's configuring each difference, like the intelligence of Earth. It's like we can say in a way it's impersonal, but it's configuring all the different identities belonging to Earth. Yeah. Okay, but so kind of like to continue the thing, 5 is not an entity. Okay, so it's a global or universal intelligence. So I don't know really the word we can say logic, but it's not a mind logic. Yeah. It has a logic it's a non-linear logic. Okay, so well, 7 we've already kind of defined it. Now let's go with 6. 6, and really, you see that? You see that? 3, 4, 3, 2, 1 is all part of the same body. Meaning, when I say my emotional plane, it's within who I am, but also the mental plane is within who I am. You see? Well, 6, 5 are different qualities of 7. Different qualities of 7. Different planes or areas. 7. Okay. 5 is this kind of, let's put it very, very simple. It's this invisible intelligence. You see that the scientists are always looking how is it that each living being is self-organizing itself, and how is it, like, what is the intelligence that is combining all these things and creating all these things? Well, they are looking for something concrete. They're looking for an identity. They're looking for this first thing. They're saying, oh, here it is. This is the God particle. You see, the thing is that they're not going to find a thing, because that intelligence is not a thing. You guys kind of get me with what I mean with 5? It's like an invisible intelligence. Let me see your body language. Is 5, are you getting it? Yeah? If you don't, tell me, yeah? Okay. Nienke looks comfortable. Like, I wish I could explain it like that to you. Well, plane 1. Okay, good. Now, okay, now this is also kind of, we are connected with these planes, but they're not so familiar to us because we are more familiar with the personal, yeah, because we've been very much doing the identity body game. We've been, our state of consciousness has been kind of in this area, but now I believe more and more kind of connecting with this 5 elements, yeah? This kind of, this intelligence that goes beyond my brain, and goes beyond any brain, that is not in the personal mind. Good. Now, what is 6? What is 6? 6, we call it the potential. And the best way to explain 6 is now to go from 7 down, okay? Potential means that we said that 7 is a no thing. It's the source. It is the source of everything. Now, when you have nothing, actually, potentially, you have anything. Now, let's put this into example. If I have a white piece of paper, like white piece of paper, I have nothing, no thing written, but potentially that piece of paper anything can be drawn on that piece of paper. So no thing, the source, 7, is the owner, we can say, of all the potentials. Potential things, potential manifestations. So when I have the white piece of paper, I can draw anything, but there's one moment that I decide to choose one thing, one entity, one design, and that design is connected to a logic. This is where Jeff is seeing this dual aspect of 5, because each potential has a logic which configures an identity. So because I've been explaining the planes from 4 to 7. Now let's kind of go the other way around. If I bought a land, with nothing, just a land, empty land. Okay? Well, that empty land could be kind of like 7 because it's a no thing, there's nothing there. But because there's no thing built there, potentially I can build anything. Now, if I want to manifest something there, manifest in 1, if I want to create something, an individual thing, at some point out of all those potentials, I have to choose 1. You know, I could build, I don't know, I could build a house, I could build a casino, I could build a shopping mall, I could build anything. Potentially, I can build anything, but there's one point that I'm going to choose one of those potentials. Yeah, so I'm going to say a house, a country house. So the potential is connected to the identity. See? So I choose that potential, and that potential has a logic to it. So there's a different, this is where the different logics come into play. But now, at the same time, 5 has the logics of all the potentials of 7. At the same time, 5 has the logic, all the logics of all the potentials of nothingness. Okay? You can see that we're going into the more abstract, impersonal planes of reality here. See? Because it's the explanations are touching areas which are kind of more unknown. More abstract tends to be more unknown. Now, I choose a potential, which is a house, that has a logic, and from that logic, I begin to do the design, the drawing, the design. That design is going to make me communicate information. Like on that design, I'm going to communicate to the builders, I want this to be built this way. So I'm going to communicate different information. You know, on that design that I built, and communicate. So I want this there, I want this there, I want the plumbers to do this, I want information. And that information is going to be moving those people in different directions. Yeah. So for the walls, I need cement. So I use the information, that information of cement, which is based on the design, which had a logic, which is a potential of that empty ground that I bought. And that's going to move people around. So move the workers, the plumbers, all the people that are needed to create the house. And they are going to begin to manifest it into existence. What's the logic of the house then? The logic is that which the design is built upon. Because when you do the design, you have a logic to that design, and that logic comes from its potential. So if I choose a house, it's going to have a different logic to create the design than if I choose a casino. So in the moment you choose the potential, you are selecting out of the great logic, you're connecting with a particular logic, and from that logic, you're going to do the design. You're going to do the drawing. But you see that the logic is previous than the drawing? You see that 5 is the logic is previous than the design. Can you see that? And then you got the design, and from the design, you can communicate information. And then when you're communicating information, you're moving energy. You're moving people around, which are going to buy cement and bringing it, and other people are going to buy the materials. And okay, so information moves energy into manifestation. But where does the information come from? A design. Where does the design come from? A logic. Where does the logic come from? A potential. And where does the potential come from? A source. So the logic could be generated design for entertainment or to make money. You see that? The logic at the end, Alejandra tends to call the plane of 5 the plane of humor. Because 5, that logic, at the end of the game, this whole experience is a great entertainment for the source. Okay. So she says it's a humor. It's a plane of humor. It's like, you know, when you are brainstorming a project, that's where 5 is kind of it's there. When you're brainstorming, when you're kind of opening into ideas, and you kind of having this entertaining gig going on, yeah. But then slowly that logic comes into a design. So you start printing it, and you start making a design. Yeah. So even things that we experience as terrible here, over here it's kind of like, that sounds fun. Okay, from the perspective of 5, like if you thinking of a movie, you thinking of terrible things that could happen in the movie from 5. Before you write the script, you see the script is 4, but before you write the script, you're brainstorming the idea of the movie, okay? And you thinking maybe of terrible things, killings, rape, but you are entertained making that script. Then when the movie occurs, yeah, and it's experienced, sometimes when we experience it, that which is funny here is not that funny here, okay? It's like, but yeah. So let's just continue with this. So we have all these planes which constitute how they, like when you open reality and you say, okay, what's in reality? You're gonna find all these planes, okay, like the mamushka. You're gonna have the source plane and the rest. Yeah. This is just giving it a general idea of it, but we'll be looking into it, okay? More and more with the module. That's why this is done into many modules, because it's to kind of go slowly into the understanding of this in a process, yeah? Now, what is very important is to see that although I divided them here, they are all working together. They are all synchronized together. So if I'm trying to understand the human body, I look at it through different systems, yeah? I look at it at the digestive system, the nervous system, and all the systems, and I look at them differently, you know? So the digestive system does something very different than, like there's a difference between the digestive system and the nervous system. But it's very important to understand that they all working together. They all connected together. And this is where 8 comes into play. 8, in this vertical 8, is that they are all connected and synchronized together. So although we are differentiating them, it's very important to understand that they are all synchronized together. You know, like my body is a unity of synchronization. Although it has different parts, it has different systems, it has different organs, but I differentiate them to understand the body better, but I must never forget that they are all working together. They are all, so we have to be able to see things separately, but also all together, working together. So 8 is like, we call it 8, the plane of synchronization, inter and multi-dimensional synchronization. That all these planes are impersonal and personal, are all dialoguing together. Yeah. So when you have a thought in your brain, understand that that is coming from a potential of the origin with a logic through your design and to your mind, and that's going to move into energy and into an expression in reality. So this is 8 is so important to understand, because we tend to see things very dissociated, like, okay, but they all an integral, synchronized unity. And if we see 7, okay, 7 is like having 7. So if we see 8, 8 is like a 7 like this, a 7 coming down, and a 7 going up. And that has this, it creates like an 8, but very rigid. You see, very rigid. So the 8 has curves because it's flexible. It's flexible. So it's like, it's got that more, it's more like a feminine aspect. Yeah. And we have a synchronization of the timeless, interdimensional synchronization, and then we have the synchronization in time, intertime synchronization, intertemporal. So look at when I say David exists 1.0, David is connected to all these dimensions, from the maximum past, maximum future, and all the interdimensions which constitute David. So this is important that in this present moment, that's why the present is like this key entry to everything, because this is connected to all the dimensions and all the levels of time. So we are multi-interdimensional, multi-intertemporal. But where is it all happening? In each present moment. In each present moment. So that is like this, this kind of, you know, strength of what do they call the power of the now, you know, the power of the now kind of thing. It's like, is that the present is the most powerful thing there is, because it's connected with everything. Yeah. So that's why the 0 point, which is our connection to the 0, is like a membrane of communication between all these planes. Yeah. Whenever you write a number, the right way of writing that number is with a 0 before it. So if you want to put 1, really, the right way of putting it is 0, 1. Because 0 is the connector with all numbers. It's like the timeless connector. Yeah? That's why 0 is connected with 7. The source. So, and 9. What about 9? Okay. Now 9 is like, if you see 6, but from the perspective of 7, you're gonna see a 9. Okay, 2 raise their hands. Who wants to speak? Excellent. It's a good.
I just wanted to say that in England, all our prefijos, all of our numbers start with 0. 0708, 01708. The number that Laura gave you, we've always got a 0 before the numbers.
Yeah, look at that. Very interesting, eh? Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, some people are not going to understand this, but you'll get to understand what we're talking about. But very interesting, because what 4 needs, if there's one plane that needs 0, like desperately needs 0, that is plane 4. Because look where 44, okay? Look where it connects.
Yeah.
It is the bridge, and it connects in 0 points. So that is where 404 is like, it's so important. It's so important because it allows the design to not be fixed. It allows the design to breathe and to change. So it's very interesting for you to say that within 44, all the codes within start with 0.
Yeah.
Because it's like the oxygen the design needs. It's the oxygen it needs. Yeah. Now, the question is, how is that 0 being used? That's the question. How? Because the 0 can separate or can connect. It's 0 is a connector. It's like a membrane. So how is it connecting, or how is it separating? Because if we see like a 0, it's like a membrane which divides something which is in and something which is out, isn't it? It's like a cell, a 0. So a 0 is like a membrane. So the 0 can separate and can connect. In Holland too. In Spain, no. In Spain, no. In Argentina, either. But it'll be interesting to see inside each country. In 44, when Susan told me, immediately came to me, of course, it's so important. Because, again, 44, it's so important for it to recognize a 0 in it. Because if not, it's a closed design. It's not an open design. It's a closed design. So it becomes a trap. It doesn't become a bridge. Okay, so 69, just to see this 9, okay? 6 is like potential, but 9 is how 7, the source, sees each potential. It's the perspective of 7, the perspective of source. And the source always sees purpose in everything. So from the point of view of 7, each potential of existence has a purpose. So anything you see that exists comes from a potential of existence, even if you don't understand why. Like, let's take people that we love globally, like Trump, you know, like, how the hell did that potential come into manifestation, you know, like, and how the hell did that become president of playing one, you know, like, how did that happen? Well, although our mind can't understand it, 7 knows that that has a purpose. So from the point of view of 1, you see, okay, it's a potential that came into existence, but 1 could say this, that is a mistake. 7 is never going to say that. 7 is, there could be an error, okay, a margin of error, what we call it, but from 7, there's no such thing as a mistake. From perspective of 7, there's no such thing as a mistake. 1, from the perspective of 1, we can see a mistake. From 7, no way. 7, there's only purpose, only purpose, only purpose. Even if its purpose is mainly to express the error. But 7 is always going to see it from everything. Each 6 has a 9. So each potential has a purpose. Everything you see that exists comes from a potential of existence. And anything that has a potential to exist has a purpose to exist. Meaning that everything has a purpose. Maybe we don't understand the purpose, but we can open to the perspective of purpose. And that's what I would say that could be a good definition of love. Love could be the capacity to see that each thing that exists has a purpose to exist. Unconditional love would come from 7, not from 1. I'm meaning like a rapist from 7 has purpose. Now from 1, that's very difficult to see. So that's also where we have to see that there are areas that from the personal, I can't manage that perspective. So I have to open to the impersonal. This is what we call derivation. And that is what we're going to be seeing in the next module. In the next module, this is like the theoretical background of the structure of what we're going to be using, okay? This drawing here is called the stencil. This is the basic stencil. I call it the stencil 1.0 because there's other complexities that emerge from this one. But this is the main kind of skeleton, the skeleton? Yeah, the skeleton. The skeleton? Well, the main structure, yeah, the fractal structure of everything we're going to be speaking here. In the next module, we're going to go more into the kind of, okay, how, like, it's more of what to do, what's like, it's more a practical application kind of view. Yeah. And there's a practical application for the personal, and there's a practical application for the connection with impersonal. Yeah? So there are two sides of the application. One I call derivation, one I call involvement, or I don't think in English you can say implication, to get involved. Yeah. So one is also, I call it responsibility, and the other one is called availability. And how these two movements come together, and they're very important to come together and not confuse both. So I guess that for this module, the main concepts have, what time is it? Okay, we just there, right on track. I hit the 3-hour mark. You see that I can do it, Bert? I can keep things short, more or less. So what I would recommend, because I think most of it was explained here, yeah, is to watch, before we go into the next module, to watch the recording at least once. So watch the record, especially in this one, okay? Watch the recording at least once. And if you have any questions while going through the process of digesting this, that's what the WhatsApp is going to be for, okay? Maybe sometimes I can't directly answer you guys, but I also want the WhatsApp group to be a communication between you guys to give different points of view of this. And to have this as this kind of map which represents the structure of space-time. The structure of space-time is the best way to define it, or the reality. And from this map, let's see how we walk in the territory, yeah? And that's that's more focused for the next module. I think it's any kind of questions, any doubts. Anybody has the feeling that certain things were unclear? Beautiful. Okay, so even though this has a theoretical representation, it's very important to see that we are directly involved in all this. Like, we all have a body, we are all in reality, we all have this time thing going on, we all have this timeless connection with time. We all have this energy and movements, emotion, feeling, sensing, and the world out there also. We all have this neurological perception. We all have this identity. We're all connected to this impersonal, invisible intelligence. We're all connected to this quantum field of potential. And we are all connected to the same source, the same emptiness, the same. At the end of the day, 7 is the I, but I mean the I, you know, and the I as the identity, but also is the black hole looking through each of our individual eyes in our 2 0 points, you know. For the time, we have a 0 for the time, a 0 to connect with the timeless, and the one looking through is 7. But all of us, yeah, and that's where we do have this need of connection. So we have this need of separation. That's what identity does very good. We do have that need to know what is David and what is the chair, and so we have a need of differentiation, but we also have a great need of connection. And that need of connection is that 7, you know, like an example to see this. The worst punishment. This for me is a definite way, example of seeing it. The worst punishment in prison. So if I'm in prison, the worst punishment they can give me is to leave me alone. To leave me without connection, without communication. And I'm talking about a place that is full of people that are going to hurt me and probably, you know, try to steal me, rape me. And the worst thing they can do to me is leave me alone. So that tells us the level of need of connection, because at the end, there's something that wants to recognize ourselves and each other. That is 7. Something wants to differentiate ourselves, 4. But something wants to recognize, that is 7. And both are important, Both are important. For this game of the unfoldment, we need to have separate and unified together. So the universal perspective of the unfolding of time and, well, the global convergent logic. We'll see that more when we talk about Earth and the human and all that. Okay. So I guess that's about it. And what I would say would be nice if you guys have people in your area, you know, like who would be interested in this, like what Jeff is doing and what Gabi's doing, is that maybe you can meet again together and continue the dialogue, you know, continue the sharing. It's a very good mechanism. Because there's a moment where you need direct connection, not just, you know, like WhatsApp. There's something that also wants to meet directly, and that's also a very good possibility and opportunity. Of course, each person in its self-reference can decide that. And I guess that's that. I'll be giving you, I already made this, which is like the drawing design, but I want to put it into a PDF format. And in this one drawing, you know, just with one look, you have the explanation of the whole thing we explained here. Yeah. So we'll be moving module to module, and each module is transcends, but is based on this first module. So this first module is kind of pretty fundamental for what's there to come, yeah? So, muchas gracias. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your Sunday. And see you next month. The last Sunday of next month is the next module, okay? So, enjoy yourself.
David, you connect us in WhatsApp then?
Yeah, I'm gonna create a group, and I'm gonna actually do that right now. I wanted to tell you guys before to give you the chance of telling me if you don't want to be there, okay? Because maybe so if nobody tells me they don't want to be in the group, it means that they all want to be in the group, so I'll create that. And in that group, I'll be sharing the materials. Yeah. So it'll be a good way of having that accessible communication. Excelente.
Okay, thank you very much, David.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
a
you,
lot,
David.
Susan.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Bye.
Thanks, David.
People.
Thank you. Now I'm gonna do like Nieke, I think, for a while, and I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go from the y-axis. I'm gonna go to the x-axis. Okay. Lots of love. Take care. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop the
Bye-bye.
recording.
Bye.
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 Okay.